I've been reading the comments, and frankly, I think some of your responses are sad. For one, my son was 13. Implying that I wouldn't know how to use a computer is hilarious. I'm 34. I've been online longer than my son had been alive. That's the difference between my generation and yours. When I did all my crazy stuff online, there wasn't such a thing as social media. Let's just say that if you had been running around on the old Yahoo chat user rooms, or played around on Freenode IRC, that you would have run into more than one woman like myself that had been a bit of an expeditionist in college. I spent 3 days going through my son's computer offline. I learned a lot. He kept a detailed journal. 6 students and 3 staff members died in the shooting, with the exception of my son. I think every single one of them deserved to die. The students had been bullying my son. The teachers had been turning a blind eye to the abuse. However, the school counselor was the worst of the bunch. John Garrett had been counseling my son online. David kept logs of all of his DMs. It didn't take much reading to find out that Mr. Garrett was grooming my son for a different kind of abuse. John Garrett had manipulated my son into performing lewd acts on webcam. The sick fuck had convinced my son that it would build his self-esteem. What started with nude selfies or the occasional show cam turned into David performing on live streams for rooms full of anonymous pedophiles who would tip him with Bitcoin and other assorted cryptocurrencies. I accessed his Bitcoin wallet and found that these men had paid my son a sum in excess of 4 Bitcoin. Feel free to check the conversion rate on that one. That was simply my son's cut. From reading the chat logs, I can only surmise that John Garrett was keeping a larger portion of these tips for himself. Somewhere along the way, a few students at his school figured out that my son was a homosexual. Apparently, my son had expressed a crush on a local boy that did not share his affection. These idiot kids proceeded to push him into the lockers, or call him a faggot. When my son would bring this to the attention of his teachers, they do nothing. This led to my son talking to John Garrett. If Jeff TK hadn't already seen to his death, I'd have already spent an evening or two peeling the skin from John Garrett's dick with a potato peeler. If you hadn't guessed already, I'm not posting these updates in real time. Over the course of the last few weeks, I have become a bitter woman. I've been using my son's Adderall to stay awake, and my husband's vodka to take the edge off. I've already cataloged all of the information on my son's desktop. I used the funds from his Bitcoin wallet to procure a new laptop, and I've spent my days at home diving into the world John Garrett had introduced him to. Once I was fairly certain I had familiarized myself with enough of the details, I went back to that private IRC server with my own screen name. I messaged Jeff TK and asked for a QR code I could use to send him the remaining payment. No questions were asked, and I sent him the $5,000 my son owed him. What followed was a conversation that read like this. So how does this work? Can I give you another list of names? A list of names? For what? Cute. My son was short-sighted. It didn't take me long to figure out most of his viewers were associates of John Garrett. We are well aware of that situation. How long did you have a rat on his system? Long enough. I assume you have 3 names for me. 4. 4. Andrew Rubens, Sterling Rutherford, Malcolm Turner, and Glenn Wade. Who is Glenn Wade? Glenn Wade is a poster on Reddit who encouraged my son to kill himself. This will cost you more than you have. I'm sure we can work something out. I'm sure we can. 3 men who worked as school counselors at various local schools would be having a very bad week. One internet troll would be having a very bad day. Even after dumping all of my son's cryptocurrency, I would still be in debt to these men for more than $10,000. I didn't care that people were going to die. Any sympathy I had for the world died with my son. No sooner than I had secured this deal though, I received a phone call. I answered and a very familiar voice said, "Mom, what have you done?" 3 weeks of hatred fell away as the tears poured from my eyes. I replied, "David, baby, is that you?" "Why, Mom? Why are you doing this?" David said in a concerned tone. I shot back, "They took you away from me, baby. I'm going to make them pay for it in blood." I stared down at the cordless handset and I realized that it was off. I had been awake for longer than a week. It was becoming harder and harder to distinguish what was real and what was just another hallucination brought on by lack of sleep. I stared at the handset and cried all over it. My son was gone. He had spent the last months of his life being violated and abused by those he was supposed to trust the most. Worst of all, instead of coming to me, he chose to die. No one was going to come out of this sitting pretty. I popped 3 more pills and chased it with mixture of Sprite and vodka. It wasn't long before I received a DM that read, "You ready to earn the rest of that money?"